What's up, everybody? Matt Kajeski here, back again with the Odd Shopper channel. And today, here to talk about some college basketball. On January the 17th, it is Super Tuesday. A couple games to get into, but before we get started, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when this and all other content goes live. Listening on podcast, leave a rating and review over there as well. It helps us a ton, so thank you if you've done that. And we are brought to you guys today by DraftKings Sportsbook, and they have a no-brainer offer for you. And most important thing, it is not going to be available forever. It actually ends on February 12th, so make sure to take advantage of this. All you have to do is head over to the DraftKings Sportsbook or click the link in the video description below. Deposit at least $5 and then make a $5 wager on anything you want. Could even be on one of these games, and that is automatically going to turn into $200 paid out in the form of free bets. It's literally $5 into $200. For doing nothing more than signing up and placing a $5 wager. This is for legal age gamblers, and in most states that is 21. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, let's talk about the games. So we're going to kick things off in the SEC. It's a little greasier of a matchup. There's plenty of good ones today, but we're going to start with Ole Miss taking on South Carolina. I hit South Carolina +7 right at open. I'm seeing this around 6 in the market right now, which I think is completely fine. Big injury news. You have Hayden Brown out for South Carolina. That's not really too impactful for me. He's one of the worst offensive players on that team, so I'm not really thinking it matters too much. And if anything, maybe that consolidates more minutes for your studs like G.G. Jackson, Michi Johnson, Chico Carter, guys we actually want to see on the floor here. But what this comes down to for me is stylistics. Right away, you have a team in South Carolina who's had trouble scoring. Ole Miss actually has had trouble scoring too. Both these teams are outside the top through 230 in offensive efficiency. But then you do have some differences defensively. Ole Miss actually has an edge there. They're 81st in defensive efficiency. South Carolina is 314th. But I think you still might be able to exploit Ole Miss with South Carolina just based on shooting regression. The South Carolina team takes a ton of threes. They're 80th in the country in three-point attempts per game. They rank 259th in three-point percentage. Now, that doesn't sound very good, does it? No, but that actually exploits what Ole Miss is a little weaker on defensively. So you look at Ole Miss's defense, 27th on the interior. They're 179th in perimeter defense. Now, I mentioned before, South Carolina is due for some positive shooting regression. And this comes a couple ways. So first off, their stud freshman, G.G. Jackson, he's been terrible shooting threes lately. He's had an incredible downswing where he's 2 of 19 from 3 in the last 4 games. In 3 of those games, he actually missed every single three-point attempt he took. But this is a pretty decent three-point shooter on the year, 31.5%. Obviously, that'd be much higher if he wasn't shooting so poorly lately. But this is also a young kid taking a bunch of bad shots earlier in the year. If you look at shot quality, amazing metric here that judges the quality of each shots. G.G. Jackson kind of trying to hero up this team early in the year, taking a bunch of bad threes. And they've been a little more balanced lately. Michi Johnson's playing a lot more minutes. He's a 34% three-point shooter on the year. And Chico Carter in particular has been playing a lot of minutes lately. He's been up over 30 of late. He actually is shooting 48.5% from 3. Now, that's likely to negatively regress, but anytime you can get a three-point shooter, at least a guy who's shooting well, more minutes on the floor, I think that's going to be good for them. And then we mentioned the interior defense for Ole Miss. They do have a slight strength towards the interior, but I think this might be a little bit overmatched. When you look at like a effective height percentage, Ole Miss is actually 144th and South Carolina is 68th. So they do have height, South Carolina. They just don't try to use it as much. But hopefully that comes into play more on the defensive side of the ball. And again, neither of these teams are pretty good at scoring. So I think we're dealing with pretty small margins here. Overall, +7 is a lot of points. I think even +6 is a lot of points where I'm currently seeing in the market. Hopefully you could get a 6.5 out there if you shop. But South Carolina is going to be the side. And they're also the home team here, which, maybe not the best home court advantage, but would much rather play at home than play at Ole Miss. Not to mention, let's talk about schedule for just 1 second before we move on. Ole Miss is the 38th ranked strength of schedule, but they're still inflated coming off the 185th ranked non-con. Their best win is against Florida Atlantic. Maybe Stanford's better than FAU. I don't know, but probably FAU's better. Anyway, they've lost to a bunch of terrible teams. They lost to North Alabama. They've gotten blown out of every single SEC game except for Georgia, who they were favored against and lost outright. South Carolina, they're streaky, but at least they've beaten competent teams. So we'll take the points with the Gamecocks. Second game, where this one I don't like quite as much, but we're going to talk about the marquee games before we get greasy here. We'll go to Baylor taking on Texas Tech. This is a spread that's moving, so I think you might want to wait on it. If you guys have watched these videos for any length of time, you know that Baylor's a team I'm trying to buy low on, and that continues here, even with Texas Tech returning AMAC in their last game. And that can't be overstated. AMAC is a big piece of this team. He's 6'11". He's going to give them a solid presence in the post. Baylor doesn't play with a ton of size. You know, like they use Flo Thamba as kind of a situational big man, and Flo Thamba comes with his own concerns. The guy has a lot of problems fouling. Now, he does draw a lot of fouls himself, so perhaps AMAC has to deal with that. But I was very curious to see effective height prior to AMAC coming into the game. Baylor 108th in effective height. Texas Tech was actually 126. Now, Texas Tech should increase now. But my question is, how much does that matter? He played 29 minutes in his first game. How much does he matter offensively? Because, Baylor, they certainly have the edge on offense. They're 15th in offensive efficiency. Texas Tech is 84th. On defense, Texas Tech is a slight edge, but Baylor's still been very good here. And Baylor's a team that's going to exploit a lot of your weaknesses defensively. In particular, Baylor's scoring really well from the perimeter. They're 23rd in three-point attempts, 71st in three-point percentage. AMAC's not going to help them defend the perimeter. Now, interior defense should be solid for AMAC. Maybe Baylor has more problems there. But ultimately, we're still talking about a team in Baylor who's due for a lot of positive regression. You can look at the schedule for both of these teams. Texas Tech hasn't beaten anybody competent. Their best wins, I can't even really decipher who it might be. Of the big, powerful conferences, they've beaten Louisville and Georgetown, maybe Louisiana Tech. But every single time they've stepped up in competition, they've lost. They lost to Creighton. Now, AMAC has only played in their most recent game, so take this with a grain of salt. Lost to Ohio State, lost to TCU, lost to Kansas, lost to Oklahoma in overtime, lost to Iowa State, just most recently lost to Texas. Now, there's no shame in any of those losses, but as a whole, this team still does not have any good wins on the schedule. Meanwhile, we've talked about Baylor a couple times on this channel before. They do have some quality wins. They've beaten some powerful teams. This team beat Gonzaga, beat UCLA, had a couple close losses, and they also played with some injuries throughout the year too. And a couple of their most recent games, including Iowa State, where they lost 77-62, TCU 88-87, and Kansas State a 97-95 loss in overtime. Shot quality had them winning some of those games. So I still think you're buying low on Baylor. I still think Texas Tech is a team we want to sell high on, given the pieces they have on that team, even with AMAC back. We'll take the points with Baylor. I think 2.5 is fine, but my recommendation would be to wait and take this before tip. There's a chance you can get a 3. All right, we mentioned getting a little greasy, and we are certainly going to do that. Now, a lot of people might be wondering, why should I back Miami, Ohio, -6 against Northern Illinois on a slate where we have a million games? But yes, we're going to go to the MAC. And the biggest thing here with the MAC in this game entirely is the injury to Keyshawn Williams for Northern Illinois. It's believed he has a torn ACL. Regardless, it doesn't look like he's going to play in this game. You're just flat out not going to get a lot of good injury reporting coming from the MAC. He's their best player. He averaged 18 points per game, played nearly every single minute. Neither team was good to begin with, and now you're removing the lone stud for this Northern Illinois team, which I don't think we can overstate how impactful that's going to be. So right away, that stands out to me. But even prior to the injury, I think you do have some advantages towards this Miami, Ohio team. Offensively, Miami, Ohio is 188th. Now, remember, neither of these teams are good. Miami, Ohio, 188th. Northern Illinois, 346. That's offensive efficiency. Well, we just removed 18 points per game from Northern Illinois. Now, on defense, there's a slight edge towards Northern Illinois. I mean, we're talking about two defenses still outside the top 250. So when we're honing on what these teams do well, it's really neither team does anything well except for Miami, Ohio's decent scoring. They take a ton of threes. They're 33rd in the country in three-point attempts. The defense for Northern Illinois does not defend them very well. They're 176th. So home team, Miami, Ohio, how many points is Williams worth against the spread? I think it's quite a bit here. I originally bet Miami, Ohio -6. I'm seeing that number currently in the market. I'm actually seeing FanDuel hanging a -5.5. Grab that if you can. Otherwise, I think -6 completely fine for Miami, Ohio facing Northern Illinois without their best player. But that'll do it for us today. Thank you guys for watching the Odd Shopper channel. Hit the thumbs up button, subscribe on the way out. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think of these picks and whatever else you're betting. It's a massive slate. I'd love to hear it. We'll be digging into games throughout the day. And we have our insider premium access in Discord where we will be breaking it all down. Otherwise, we'll be back again tomorrow with more bets. So thank you guys for watching and good luck tonight.